Hello guys and welcome to Forza Motorsport. This will be an online race in Mugello Circuit using the Forza GT class. This is like a GT3 class, I believe. So we are going to be racing in online multiplayer, as you guys can see. This is going to be a really fun race. I qualified P3. At the start of the race, maybe this was too many cars for my computer and I got this bug where the sound stopped for a little bit. But then everything turned back to normal. I want to be careful into turn 1 because I qualified P3 and there are so many cars. This is such a crazy hectic race. There is always some contact, but everyone kept the race really clean for the first few corners, nothing too crazy going on. The cars slide a bit. I must have been really lucky because this was a very clean lobby. Everyone kept the race clean. Everyone is doing really well to have a professional race. This is the opposite of that usual meme of the Forza lobbies. I was trailing behind P2 and gaining on him while I was testing some new crazy force feedback settings that I just came up with and that I have to share in another video here on my YouTube channel. So I'm already looking for options to overtake him because I can see that I'm losing time. I could be going faster and I'm not even really trying to push the tires that much. But my setup is very loose and as you can see it's a little bit oversteered as well. So I need to maximize the tire wear that I'm putting onto my tires. And because of that, if I'm wearing my tires a bit more, then I want to be going faster because of that. Here he's starting to gain a little bit and then I have the opportunity to do the move. But it was a little bit on the risky side. I ended up punting the guy, for which I'm really sorry. This was a really bad move on my part now that I see it again, because I should have been more confident with the overtake. I thought he was going faster and I was too slow to move away from his back. I ended up putting the guy on off track. So I'm the only dirty driver on this race right now, or on this track. From what I've seen, everyone else was clean but me. I enjoyed watching the replay camera to have a better awareness of my lines and how much I am using the track limits. As you can see, I have the track limit display active, so I can see those little dots marking how far can I go. This game actually takes track limit infractions very seriously, as well as contact infractions, and you can get penalties very easily. Many people complain that sometimes the penalties can be a bit too harsh, and so I have to learn to deal with it to be competitive. Talking about competitiveness, everyone complained a lot about the force feedback for the first few months. I'm not sure if they have worked a lot or not in the recent patches, but I found that this force feedback, for the kind of game that it is, it's quite usable. It was even surprisingly realistic to me, but I ended up using some really weird and different settings that are not the usual settings from everything else that I found on the internet. So I have that separate video on my channel if you want to check out. I found this force feedback at first a bit strange and dull. It made me remember something that was very filtered, maybe like Need for Speed Heat, but after that it started feeling closer to something like Grid Legends. And after even more tweaking, I'm not sure if it's feeling even better than that now. But I think there is a lot of room for improvement on the force feedback development, and I hope they keep developing the patches with the physics and force feedback updates and the other features like the car radar, so you can have better awareness when fighting in proximity. As you could see on the previous lap, I'm kinda catching up to the guy in P1, but I keep having these weird oversteer moments because maybe my car setup, the cartoon as they call it in Forza, the cartoon is a little bit loose And I really enjoy having loose car setups on most of my simulation and racing games, because you can get a ton of rotation. You just need to be very careful in the way that you drive, but you can go really fast with a loose setup. Of course, it's more prone to get unstable over curves sometimes, or if there is contact, you are risking having more instability and just getting sent into the shadow realm a bit more easily. I'm starting to have a nice battle here with the guy in P1. My car is very oversteery, understeery. I'm still trying to figure this out. Again, I get much more speed in this section of the track, and I start overtaking here, but then he brakes late, and we are fighting for the apex. We just have a little tap. I'm sorry for the contact under oversteer and understeer, but I got to P1. We just overtook the guy, and now he's following us, he's trailing us behind. I'm not sure if I'm going to defend into the first turn or not, because I don't really want to risk the race. So here I was able to do a clean turn 1, and I'm trying to close off the door to the apex so the guy cannot just lunge up the inside, but then, oh, here it was pretty bad. Even though you can see up there that we had a small collision, it was not his fault. I was off the track way before his car touched me, and the car touched me on exit. It's just that I'm struggling to deal with the oversteer and understeer on this car. And I had a little bit of understeer on that corner. I thought I was going to make it, but I lacked a little bit more grip in the front. The car has already the rear stepping out quite easily, and if I had even more grip on the front, sometimes it would be even harder to drive this car, because the car is feeling very pointy, very nosy. As you can see, I'm again trailing back to him and gaining time, but my tires are starting to get worn out, and the car is already a bit loose. My new force feedback settings also feel a bit loose, and it's really hard to keep control on everything and just be really smooth and gentle and just try to make the car go where I want it to go. One of the things that I love here in Forza Motorsport is how fast the tires wear. It's because usually, even if it's not realistic like on most simulators, the tires actually last a bit longer, and you need to race for 30 minutes, 1 hour, 2 hours to have interesting and different strategies in the races. But here I don't need to accelerate tire wear. In many of my races, if I'm doing races offline, usually I have to accelerate tire wear if I want to have pit stops in the middle of the race. And you also have that option here where soft tires will barely last you 1 lap at Le Mans. Talking about tires, this is probably going to be the hardest lap of my race, because my tires are getting very worn out. Whoa. This is getting crazy. I'm looking at the screen and seeing the steering movements and the inputs that I had to do. I had to correct so much in those 2 corners right behind. Here I had to correct quite a bit as well, so the rear end is starting to go away and to slide quite a lot. This is just pretty painful. I'm bleeding time all over the place because I can't just keep up with my best lap time. And this is just one of those interesting things, because in this moment I don't have any cars in front of me. This is the ideal lap for me to push as hard as I can before I pit. And especially because now the tires are getting worn out. Even if I destroy the tires and they get some graining and blistering, it won't really matter. That was crazy, man. This is really hard to just keep the car on the track. The car is drifting, almost going sideways half of the time throughout the corners with a huge slip angle. But we still managed to keep it on the tarmac. That's the most important thing. The pain and suffering is about to end. We are going to pit for a fresh set of tires. The guys right behind me haven't pitted as well, so they're going to be probably pitting, but they are quite far away. They are many seconds behind me. But the guy that I was fighting for P1 with the number tag being, that's the guy that I'm curious about. When I exit the pits, where he will be and where will I be compared to each other on the track. Maybe I was able to overcut him when I exit because I don't see the guy. The guy is quite far away, still a lot of seconds behind, maybe 5 or 4 seconds behind me, and somehow even racked up quite a few more seconds in penalties. So now I think I will probably relax a little bit. I'll keep driving fast, of course, but I think I'll try to save the tires a bit more. I'm going to try to avoid too much oversteery moments where the rear end is stepping out too much, and I'll try to save a bit more the tires so I can get to the end of the race and my tires won't be completely destroyed. This race, because it's 9 laps instead of 8, the tires were, you always have to choose which stint will be your worst stint. If you're going to pit on the 4th lap and you have the fresher tires at the beginning of the race, but then on the last lap of the race your tires will be 1 lap older, and those decisions do have an impact here. It's quite interesting and fun to see how those little small decisions, with such a simple game and simple gameplay comparing to the most complex simulators, you still have some strategy and some things going on that you have to think about and decide. I'm not sure if I tested or noticed it much yet, but I'm not aware how much your driving style can actually influence the tire wear. Maybe it's more about the car setup and the driving of the car. And of course, if you are locking and sliding a lot, the tires could get flat spots and worn out. But I'm curious to see that if by driving less aggressively you can save the tires, and that can be a strategy and make a difference, instead of pushing really hard and then melting the tires. Especially on the soft tires. The soft tires could be very sensitive to that kind of thing. And about more variations in driving style, I can think as well about saving fuel. Sometimes you don't have enough, you think you put enough fuel, but you're lacking just a tiny bit of fuel, and maybe if you start releasing the throttle before the end of a straight, before the braking zone, and if you start sometimes using a little bit more lower RPMs, spending less time on the red line, maybe through that you can save that tiny bit of fuel and just be able to finish a race that otherwise you may not finish because you will run out of fuel. I'm surprised at the amount of penalties, 6 seconds, 7 seconds. How can those guys rack up so many seconds in penalties? Since I've exited the pits, I've gained at least 2 or 3 seconds on the guy in pit 2. I think he was in 4 or 5 seconds behind me at that point, and I've kept increasing my distance from him. So hopefully this will be an easy win, the race. Well, not that easy. I had to really put some effort into controlling the car and driving, but it's not a huge struggle. We're not having to do big pedals. I'm not really that worried about the end of the race. Hopefully we will get there safely with just some heavy tire wear, as it is normal and usual here, driving with medium tires in Forza, but we will survive. I think the physics displayed, the car is getting lighter with less fuel because now the rear end is starting to step out a bit more than in the first stint, maybe because the car is lighter and less heavy, and at the same time the tires are not that worn out, but I still notice the rear end starting to become lighter. But now it is happening a little bit before the tires even reach the orange or yellow state, where they are getting really worn out. This was something I was not expecting. A really nice feature that you have here is that you can get the lapped cars to be ghosted. And because this game is also on consoles, multi-platform, you have people driving on keyboard, maybe on controllers and very other means. Sometimes if a driver is that much slower than the others, he might be struggling with the proper car control, so the ghosting can be very helpful. Of course, it's a little bit unrealistic, and there is a certain thrill, especially in multi-class races when people are doing tons of overtakes with faster class cars on slower class cars, and you want to be polite, and it's all about racecraft and track knowledge, car knowledge, being able to drive without having any accidents and just being able to control the car while doing dangerous driving. It's always a nice feeling, but it's a very risky thing when you are in open lobbies. Oh, and I went wide. I tried to turn in, lost the rear. I was too happy just pushing down the throttle, and the car was not turning in well enough, but I was trying to force the car, and I ended up going wide. This was a huge waste of time. I'm very lucky that the guys are far behind and that I'm not losing any positions with this kind of mistake. I need to be very careful now. I don't want to be in it. I'm around the last sector, third sector. On the last lap of this race, this will be my first few sets of corners, and after these turns I'll be heading straight into my first online race victory in this series after the tutorial races. In the tutorial races I won quite easily, but I think those are just like an easy introduction. I really love this track Mugello from good old Assetto Corsa, where I learned this track and was introduced to it in many other online races for the first time. And here I go, finally I'm getting my first victory in Forza Motorsport. This is really nice. There was some fun battling in the beginning of the race, and the race was overall a nice performance, I think. Many people gained a ton of places right behind me, and the drivers that were behind me, they seemed to have pretty decent performance as well. Congratulations to them. Thank you guys for sticking with me and watching the race and watching my channel. Check out more videos on the channel if you want to find settings and some other stuff. If you have any tips, suggestions and ideas, leave it in the comments down below. Give a like to the video if you liked it, and subscribe to the channel and click the bell notification ring. Thank you very much and have a great day, guys. See you on the track.